Well, we had Future Connected, now we have Future Redeemed. This is going to be the Founders prequel, so it's probably not the massive Xeno blowout with every party member from 1 and 2 returning, but it's still some major fan service. It also means we might not see too much, if anything at all, about the futures of the 6 party members from Xenoblade 3, which is a bit sad. But that's okay, because the new character from the teaser is actually our protagonist, Matthew. Aside from the obvious Phase Xenogears inspiration in character design, Matthew is suggested to be the child of one incarnation of Noah and Mio, meaning in the opening scene of the trailer, he's essentially watching N, his father, murder his granddad right in front of him. Matthew actually mentions the death of granddad in the Nintendo Direct teaser, but now we actually get to see the scene where it happens. I actually think that now Matthew's line in the teaser was directed towards N and not Alvis, which might clear up a little bit of the confusion. The Japanese Xenoblade website and official Twitter account have come in clutch with a bunch of additional information not seen in the trailer. And one of the things it confirms is that Matthew belongs to a brand new attacker class, as we can see from the class icon next to his portrait here. The website bio states that Matthew is looking for his sister Nael, who has mysteriously disappeared. We don't exactly know how or why she's disappeared, but we can assume she's found at some point during the events of Future Redeemed, as suggested by her looking exactly like the statue of the founder of House Doyle, which is located in the city in base Xenoblade 3. But more on all that later. This whole thing gives me major Torna vibes. In this early shot of sparks flying by a portrait of Noah, Mio, and presumably baby Matthew during better times, a reminder of the way things used to be while the city is destroyed by N, really reminds me of Jin's reminiscence with the family photo in Torna's ending. And speaking of Torna, we jump right into some huge new character reveals with a super jazzy song playing in the background, which is now confirmed to be the battle theme. And man, I just love it. If that photo was giving off Torna vibes, this song is ejecting Torna straight into my veins. Prequels with adjusted combat systems and upbeat battle themes are starting to become the norm for Xenoblade DLC, and I'm totally here for it. But before we get into the combat itself, let's talk about the characters revealed here. Just to warn you one more time, if you're spoiler sensitive at all, it's here when I really suggest you to click off the video. And if you haven't played prior Xenoblade games, please experience those for yourself. After Matthew, we have a female character called A, who's a healer class in combat. She doesn't appear to be related to anyone else in the party, but bears a striking similarity in name and appearance to Alvis. She also holds a red sword reminiscent of the Monado, which is yet another Alvis connection. Her role with this game's party is quite curious, as she's the only party member not to end up a founder of the original city, and her name suggests that at some point she might join Mobius to become the widely speculated Consul A. Is this setting her up for a betrayal story during the events of Future Redeemed? Only time will tell. The next one is Glimmer, a healer character. And I really love this design. Based on the appearance and the voice, this has to be the child of Rex and the Aegis. Which leads me to the next character, another presumed child of a previous Xenoblade protagonist, Nicole. Nicole is a defender class, and is a spitting image of a younger Shulk, goggles and all. I can only assume this is the eventual child of Shulk and Fiora, and he wields some really cool looking mechanical arms, assumedly a weapon that Shulk built for him post-Future Connected. What I find interesting is that his name, Nicole, sounds a lot like Micole, the leader of the Machina in Xenoblade 1. Whether or not it's intended, I still think it's a cool reference to a fun and underrepresented Xenoblade 1 character. Last, we get the reveal of our 2 previous protagonists returning as party members. Long-haired Shulk, who is a defender class, and the now super buff Rex, who is an attacker. This is all hype beyond belief, and oh man, when I heard this.
I like your attitude, kiddo. I'll show 'em a thing goes right.
I got a chill down my spine. This is gonna be so awesome. After the title reveal, the trailer kicks off by reiterating something we already know, but in a beautiful, artistic way. This is going to be another meeting of the worlds of Xenoblade 1 and 2, in the form of past members of Kevis and Agnes, paralleling the intro encounter of the Xenoblade 3 party members, as we get a scene of the offspring of the first 2 Xenoblade protagonists discovering each other for the first time. Glimmer from Agnes is in awe of seeing Nicole's Kevesi mechanical arms. And what's really interesting is how Glimmer says his arms can't be a blade. There was no indication that people from Agnes knew what blades were in Xenoblade 3, and the Eno DLC quest made that even clearer. But hey, I guess when you might be the offspring of Rex and his blade, you might know some things. This is a really cool scene to choose for the trailer, since it again highlights the differences between the two worlds, which will make it all the more satisfying when they eventually unite to rebel against Mobius. Shortly after, we get our first look at the future redeemed battle system, and its UI looks very similar to Xenoblade 3's. For one, we have 6 party members, just like in the base game. Right now, it's not clear if this will be a static 6, or if some will be swappable for others, notably Nael once she's found. Although, in the Japanese Twitter bios, her and Alvis are the only ones not to have a class icon beside them, so that might actually be a deconfirm for her being playable. The Japanese site calls Arts Ouroboros Power, but aside from the name change, I don't see how Arts are any different from base game Xenoblade 3. The Arts palette looks largely the same, with the option for Fusion Arts still here as well. We also see chain attacks will return, suggesting they'll probably work in the same way. The big difference is on the left side of the HUD, where the Master Arts are. The leftmost Master Art is no longer an interlink, and now seems to be some sort of tag team attack. After doing a bit of research on the Japanese site, they are calling these union combos. This one, for example, is called Monado Crash, which Shulk and Matthew work together to pull off. When I first saw the trailer, I wondered how these combo attacks would work. It seemed weird that we saw Shulk and Matthew and A and Rex as pairs. I wondered if each character had a set partner. So if, for example, you're playing as Matthew or Shulk, your only option would be Monado Crash. But if this were the case and there were only default pairings, wouldn't Shulk be with his son, or at the very least, Rex? Luckily, the Japanese website answered my question. As we can see here, you can use this menu to set each character's partner, leading to different union combos depending on the pair. Unfortunately, I can't read the Japanese text in the video to translate the effects of each. Link that in the comments if you can find it, but it's cool we got some additional clarification on how this stuff all works. We actually see Nicole and Glimmer's union combo in action, Hellstream, and it's activated to finish off this enemy here. There's a little bit of a cinematic element to these, so it kinda reminds me of the team attacks from Persona games, and even the Blade specials from Xenoblade 2. On the Japanese site is an additional section for something called Affinity Goals. These kind of remind me of the Blade Affinity charts, also from Xenoblade 2. Each character looks to have a set of unique quest goals that will help them power up and fill out the chart, which include exploring the world, meeting people, and defeating enemies. Doing these objectives will grant a character something that's translated to Kizuna points, points which help grow toward your affinity goals. We see that as objectives are completed, what you do will be recorded in a brand new bestiary, item collectopedia, and a Torna-style affinity chart. The JP site also mentions that future redeems can be played at any time, even before base game Xenoblade 3, the same way that Future Connected was set up with Xenoblade Definitive Edition. With this being a prequel, I guess you could technically play it before base game Xenoblade 3, but I probably still wouldn't advise it, especially with the way the world works in this game. It can get confusing, and I doubt starting with the prequel would make it any easier to understand. Maybe I'll change my stance on the game after I play it, but who knows right now. As I mentioned earlier, this is a Founders prequel, and it's now totally clear that 5 of our 6 future redeemed party members are City House founders. Obviously, with the exception of A, who isn't the founder of House Doyle, that's going to be Matthew's sister, Nael. If you do your due diligence learning about the city founders in base Xenoblade 3, then you know what's ultimately going to happen in Future Redeemed. For the most part, it's just a story of how we got to that point. Kinda like how we knew Torna was going to be destroyed and the Golden Country was just a story of how we got there. This trailer also gives us something extremely cool in our first look at the full Trinity processor, with Ontos, Logos, and Numa fully intact. We also get a shot of Klaus's experiment. So if Xenoblade 3 is in fact going to be the end of the Klaus saga, it seems we're going to get some answers and some closure. We also see what's being called the Liberator's base of operations, which is likely this game's main town. It's here where they'll probably build up that affinity chart I showed earlier, where we'll talk to a lot of NPCs and accept side quests. From the character bios, we know that Shulk and Rex are the leaders in this liberation group against Mobius and the Flame Clocks. So it's them and their resistance teams that have probably built this place. Toward the end, we revisit this shot from the teaser trailer, which has evil Alvis appearing to Shulk and Rex. In this new scene, we now know that Zed, the leader of Mobius, is also here, and Zed has a voice line, seemingly begging to Alvis, referring to him as his god who wishes to destroy the people. This indicates that Zed is a follower and worshipper of Ontos, meaning he's a higher power that Zed fears and respects. If this is the real Alvis and not some corrupted form, he might appear to Zed because he doesn't necessarily oppose the Endless now. Since we know from Xenoblade 1, he doesn't necessarily have a preference on which way the world goes. He's not for the cycle or against it. As Rex says at the end of the teaser, he's a heartless machine. After all was said and done in Xenoblade 1, he was neutral and let Shulk decide the fate of the world. But if this evil Alvis is trying to destroy the world's people, doesn't that directly oppose Zed, Mobius, and the Endless now as well? This leads me to where I'm still kinda confused, and where I'm hoping to start a discussion about it with you all in the comments section down below. What's the story behind Alvis, party member A, and Mobius? Who exactly is A? Is she Alvis himself? Or maybe he's not completely neutral, and she's a being he created to help the first Ouroboros? It's been theorized for a while that Alvis was actually Consul A, so is he Zed's boss and the driving force behind Mobius? Or maybe he's not, but A is the one that eventually joins Mobius and becomes the Consul. Or maybe there's no Consul A at all. The involvement of Alvis and A in the story seems to be the biggest mystery here. I'm not claiming to be some sort of scholar of the lore, so maybe I'm missing something obvious, but for now I think we'll just have to wait to find out more. Or I guess we could just ask Riku, since apparently he was here all along. And oh yeah, the game's out next week. So I guess the wait for Tears of the Kingdom won't be so bad after all.